Hi. What about the inertia of old habits, patterns, behaviours, inherited things? I
Yep.
mean, how does that how is that free will?
Well, let's
Or
see
how is
what's...
that God's, how is that the will of love? If
Yeah. Firstly, we must first see where they come from, our old habits. So if we look at our habits, and some of them... stubble... Some of them come from our environment, of course, where we've been over and over, we've been educated through a process to conform into a certain way of thinking or feeling. But in that process, there were emotions and feelings created. There were desires created, and so forth. So, for example, if I can give some practical examples. Let's say we have the habit now, and we can go for an addictive habit, such as like smoking. That's our habit. Let's call it a habit. That habit usually came from a number of sources. Firstly, the fact is that there are large companies and businesses that rely on us having that habit. And so they've done a lot of advertising and they've done a lot of influential type of things upon us to think that we might take up smoking. And they made smoking look like cool and acceptable and socially, a way to be socially involved, right? And so they created, through that process of advertising, desires in us that we didn't have before. And we chose to engage those desires. And then on top of that, we might have feelings of fear, right, inside of us that come from our childhood. And we find that whenever we engage the smoking process, that our fear goes down, right? So in other words, we feel, there's a relaxed sort of a feeling. And so there's another feeling that we're avoiding by taking up the habit. And so what you will find generally with regard to our habits is that every one of them have been created, usually in our formative years, through a process that occurred, where not only were we fed things from the environment, but also from that moment on we had to make a choice. Now, for some of us, some of the habits were formulated so young that it's almost like our parents made the choice for us. So that was their free will imposing itself upon us and making the choice for us. Or some of the habits occurred during our teenage years when we were just experimenting with life and we made some choices that formed many of our habits at that particular time. So with habits, there is always a mixture of different wills involved, not only just our own, but the will of society in general and the will of an environment in which we grew up all affect the creation of the habit itself. And so what we need to understand, though, is that there needs to be some kind of priority system in the way in which we honour our will. For the majority of us, we don't honour our will as our own primary concern first. We tend to assimilate from our environment what the environment wants for us to do. That's what we have a tendency to do first. And the reason why we do that is because the majority of us know that whenever we do something that everyone else doesn't like, they have a tendency to attack us in some way, whether that be emotionally or even physically. They have a tendency to put us down and attack us. And that's a way of manipulating our will. So many of us have learned that actually we feel that we can't make choices and decisions without taking into account our parents, right? Our partner, if we have one, society in general, our children, the government, the religion, and unfortunately, by the time we've got that far, there's very little space for our will, because most of the time we're absorbing so much of everybody else's will by that time that what's left is next to nothing in terms of what do we really want. And this is one of the problems of the use of free will on the planet, is that we have so many things and people and pressures formulating what we should do with our will, that by the time we've considered all of these things, we don't end up doing what we would like to be doing. And in fact, many of us don't even know that we're not doing what we'd like to be doing by that stage, because we're so invested emotionally with feelings and other things in all of these people and how they view us, that we have forgotten who we even are half the time. And so therefore, we don't know what is our own will and what is the will of all of the people that surround us. And that's the problem that we face, I feel, on the planet. So what we need to do instead is we need to start honouring this gift of free will, that it's ours, that it's a gift given directly to yourself, that you can make choices and decisions independent of society, independent of your partner, independent of parents, independent of children, independent of government, independent of religion. You can make choices and decisions. This is a gift God gave you, to be able to make choices and decisions, whatever choices and decisions you want. And the key is to understand that. And what I feel is happening quite a lot on the planet is that we are so ingrained in certain choices and decisions that we're really in a perpetual 24/7 cult of some kind. And the cult's different depending on where we grew up, what culture we come from, what religious faith we come from, what governmental system that we've grown up under, and so forth. But in the end, there's all these pressures pressuring us, conforming us into what that particular society, or what we feel, that particular society feels you should be. Now, this is the problem, is that there is very little honouring of an individual's free will on the planet. Now, I'm not suggesting that just because we should honour the free will of the individual, that we should honour their right to do anything, including anything damaging to other people. I'm not suggesting that. And this is why we've called this talk the loving use of free will.